Formula One is the world's most exciting sport, with 10 teams and 20 drivers, with over 15,000 fans. Let's stop talking in this stupid voice now. And let's stop doing this Lightning McQueen thing. The sport's first big star was Giuseppe Antonio Farina, which won the first ever F1 race, the 1950 Silverstone Grand Prix. After 6 more races, which he won 2 more of them, he was crowned the first world champion. But Farina's reign was short-lived, with Juan Manuel Fangio and Alberto Ascari going wheel to wheel, as you can see right here. It's not yet wheel to wheel, but I just picked that up from Safari, so don't care. Were the 2 next biggest rivals, with Ascari being the first Ferrari ever world champion and having 2 titles with the prancing horse. Fangio, however, would win much more than that, with 3 more world titles, which means 5 in total, with 4 different teams. 1 for Alfa Romeo, 1 for Maserati, 2 for Mercedes, and 1 for Ferrari. But he also had a different rival, his second most fierce rival, Sir Stirling Moss. The man known as Mr. Motor Racing completed 16 wins and was going wheel to wheel with the first ever British world champion. The first ever British world champion was this man, Mike Hawthorn, which beat Moss to the 1958 world title. But then, after that, there was a new legend to be forged when Jim Clark, the one-team man, joined forces with the legendary, mind-blowing, has a giant mind, Colin Chapman. He competed 2 world titles and with another world champion, Graham Hill, right on Clark's tail. Hill was known as Mr. Monaco, a fitting title for a man who won the 100-lap race 5 times, and the first one to win the Monaco Grand Prix more than 3 times. This was Sir Jackie Stewart. The Flying Scot completed 2 world titles with Tyrrell and 1 with Matra. He also dabbled in one of the most important things in any sport, safety. He came from the 1960s, which the drivers wore literal caps and goggles. But his distribution to make Formula One safer created this helmet, the double visor. The sport's next big star was white Brazilian Emerson Fittipaldi, the fastest heck Brazilian, by the way, the first Brazilian ever world champion, came into the sport with the legendary Lotus team, with Colin Chapman supplying him with an incredibly fast car. The next 2 insanely fast people was Niki Lauda. He was burned to crisp in an accident, as you can see his ears completely burned away, in an accident at the Nürburgring, which left his rival, James Hunt, with the title lead. They battled at the final race, Japan. But at the final race, and almost at the end of the race, Lauda pulled into the pits and said the track was way too wet. No way, Jose, would he race on a track that wet. That left Hunt in 6th position with a giant puncture that exploded his tire. He nursed his wounded car to the pits, and he survived walked up into third place, and that was enough to give him enough points to be world champion. The sport's Nick Bigstar was another Brazilian that followed in the footsteps of the great Emerson Fittipaldi, Nelson Piquet. Another new world champion. Following right after Nelson Piquet's title in 1981, he stepped up in 1982 and won the world title for the Williams Honda team. The sport's next big legend was Frenchman Alain Prost. He won the first race of the season at the French Grand Prix, his home Grand Prix, and moved to McLaren. There he had his most success battling with Niki Lauda after Niki Lauda returned for the 1984 season. He was battling quite hard with Prost. And Prost's greatest rival, Ayrton Senna. He was a triple world champion, also a Brazilian, also inspired by Emerson Fittipaldi, just like Piquet. And he was in a very, 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 very 68 times very intense rivalry with his teammate Alain Prost. The next Formula One world champion was Brit Nigel Mansell. He was in an intense rivalry with Nelson Piquet, a triple world champion, as well as the guy that, we were talking about just now before Prost. He was also a world champion that only won one title despite being in Formula One for 180 races, the most races before becoming world champion. Formula One's next big star was German Michael Schumacher. He had won the 1994 World Championship, battling hard with Graham Hill's son, Damon Hill. After the 1994 season had been lost to Michael Schumacher, Damon Hill then lost the world title to Michael Schumacher again. By this time, Schumacher was already a double world champion before he signed with Ferrari. In the 1996 season, Hill won his one and only world title, 6 points clear of Michael Schumacher. Again, Schumacher was outfoxed the second time in a row by Jacques Villeneuve, driving for the Williams team alongside Damon Hill. Then it was a 3-season-in-a-row defeat from Michael Schumacher, with Mika Häkkinen beating him to the 1998 season. The next season, Schumacher crashed at Silverstone, which left him in hospital until it was the final 3 rounds. Eddie Irvine had scored many of the wins in that remaining time, and he was basically the only one that could challenge Mika by now. But Eddie did not have the pace to overtake Mika into the last lap, and that gave him his second world title. After a quite embarrassing 4-season-in-a-row defeat for Schumacher, it then became a 5 world title in a row legacy. His first title for the Ferrari team came in year 2000, and his legacy ended in 2004 with 16 wins out of 18 races. What on earth was that? But after the 2004 season, there was another king that would dethrone the new emperor. There was a new emperor to motor racing. Fernando Alonso, in his Renault, again outfoxed the great Michael Schumacher in the year 2005 and 2006. But in the 2007 season, long-time McLaren driver and new Ferrari protege Kimi Raikkonen beat Lewis Hamilton, rookie, and Fernando Alonso to the 2007 world title. Following up, there were different legends to be forged. Lewis Hamilton, world champion in the year 2008, and Jenson Button, the world champion in 2009. But then, in 2010, a new frown was to be created. Not just kidding, a new legend was to be forged. Sebastian Vettel. His first Red Bull session came in 2009, came 3 points behind Jenson Button. But now was his time to shine, as he thought Michael Schumacher was his idol. By the way, he's also a German, so obviously Schumacher's his idol, because that's apparently how it works. Let's get to the point. He had 4 world titles in a row. From 2010 to 2013. And then, in 2014 to 2019, Lewis Hamilton tied up his world titles with 6. In 2020, in maybe 2011, because now we have COVID-19, he would challenge Schumacher for Schumacher's 7 titles. Yes, and those are just the best of the most famous world champions. But there are still some other details I left. And just wait a second, please. Sorry, between the 70s, I left out 2 world champions. Please wait, these were the 2 world champions that I left out. The 1978 and 1979 world champion. The 1978 world champion, Mario Andretti, again driving for the legendary Lotus team, commanded by British genius, one of the many British geniuses, that's for what I know, Colin Chapman. After Andretti, the next big star was Ferrari protege Jody Scheckter. He beat teammate and F1 legend Gilles Villeneuve to take his one and only world title. The next 2 world champions was 1989, 1960, 1968 world champion Jack Brabham. And 1980 was the world title of Alan Jones, the second Australian to win a world title. Thank you for watching the clip.